as parents, we're led to believe that we should be doing, and that word should, it's like a bad word for me. Yeah. They might put explicit on this episode just because we're using the word should so much. But it is this feeling that parents should be doing all these things. And if they fall short of that, then somehow they're not a good enough parent. They're not a successful parent. They're not a modern parent. And it's just like, oh my gosh, can we just put the brakes on that and let's just change our perception of what is connection. I want to dispel the myth that connection is the number one tool to getting the behavior you want out of your kids. I hear this all the time, that if we want our kids to act the way we want them to, then we have to connect before we correct, or we have to spend one-on-one time with our kids. And I find that that actually causes more problems than actually helping things out. What do you think?
Well, I think that it is one part of the equation, for sure. And I think that what most people have in their head for connection time is this very idyllic, like Pinterest perfect version, right? Like Disney princesses with forest animals tweeting in the background connection.
Yeah, I think that connection, don't get me wrong. Absolutely. I mean, connection is a huge part of what we teach here at Calm the Chaos. It's one of our 4 elements in our Calm the Chaos framework. And so connection is super important, but I think you're right. I think there's this idea of what connection is. And without digging into that, we get this idea that we should be playing with all 8 of our kids individually for 15 minutes a day, or we should be spending this quality time with no other distractions, nothing else going on every single day. Otherwise, we're ruining our relationship with our kids. And I think it puts a lot of pressure on modern parents, especially parents who are single, parents who have their own neurodivergence, parents who are just struggling to get through a day because they're dealing with so much overwhelm and so much stress already that it feels almost like this impossible task to be able to connect with their kids in the amount that parenting experts are asking them to when it comes to having a better relationship with them. And then on the flip side, if we're using connection as this bait and switch to, I'm going to connect with you just to get behavior I want, I mean, our kids can see right through that. And no amount of connection is actually going to change the situation if we're only doing it for this end purpose to get what we want versus building a more trusted, safe environment for our kids.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I never even thought about that because I'm not like a super disingenuous human, right? So like it wasn't even in my like
always with good intentions. I just think that our kids, especially our incredibly sensitive kids, they feel right through it.
Sure. And I feel like I just made sense of like 7 people that I know. That's like, oh, that's why I don't like when you do that.
And so I think what I want to do in this episode is really talk about this big kind of like fear or challenge that I hear from people when they hear about, I want to be more respectful. I want to be more connected. I want to use gentle parenting, but I just don't have time to connect with my kids. And it's a really valid concern. And so I thought we could go over today, kind of apply our Calm the Chaos framework to this challenge and talk to some of those challenges of being stressed out, busy, not having a lot of time in your day. How can you still connect with your kids, even if those are the truths or what's going on in your life right now?
The best way to put it, like there's this current in society, right? Like a river current, like a flow. And it feels like, on one hand, we have to have this sort of idyllic connection, right? Like I'm picturing like Sound of Music. There's like the motherly figure. I've never seen it, so if I get the details wrong, forgive me.
You've never seen Sound of Music?
No.
Oh, we should definitely watch that. It's so good. I mean, you think you're singing Scuttlebutt a lot? You would sing the songs from
Yeah,
Oh, it's so good.
The hills are alive, right? That's about
That's
all I
not
know.
even the best one.
But like what I can picture is like this woman frolicking on like a countryside seascape. Everything's green. The children are marching along, singing, right? And there's that, right? It's just on your left hand, right?
Yeah.
And on the right hand, we have, well, you have to put them in soccer, and they have to do art, and they have to be well-rounded. So we should also put them into drama, and then also the singing classes, because that will help with the drama. And then we should put them in dance, because that will help them when they play soccer.
I see a lot of that, but that's this, like, those are the extremes. But what I see where people get stuck is we have to sit down for family dinner every night, or we have to go on family bike rides every Saturday morning, or we have to have this dedicated family time. And if one thing goes off, then it's like, great, we can't even connect as a family because the board game's going to fly at somebody's head.
That's where I was going to go exactly. But I wanted to put this next part in because there's a third hand, and then that third hand is, it's no longer a like single income society, right? Most people have to have dual income to make ends meet now, right? Or have like the lifestyle that they want. Then you add in exactly what you're talking about. Well, now I'm working, husband is working, or spouse or partner is working, right? Kids have 14 different things they're doing plus homework. And we're supposed to go for the bike rides, and we're supposed to go for the ice cream, and we're supposed to have 9-hour games of Monopoly.
My head is swirling just even listing off these things. And they're such common things that as parents, we're led to believe that we should be doing. And that word should, it's like a bad word for me. Yeah. They might put explicit on this episode just because we're using the word should so much. But it is this feeling that parents should be doing all these things. And if they fall short of that, then somehow they're not a good enough parent. They're not a successful parent. They're not a modern parent. And it's just like, oh my gosh, can we just put the brakes on that and let's just change our perception of what is connection, and then let's make a plan to make this doable in the smallest bite-sized pieces.
Yeah. Maybe this is why we're banned in Australia.
Because we said should?
Yeah.
Maybe. We're banned in Australia? Oh, on Google Podcast.
On Google Podcast.
Google Podcast would not play our work. I don't know.
It's very strange.
If it was the day that I said the S word, or I don't know.
The should word.
Yeah. It could have been the Big D episode. Who knows?
Sorry to I just popped in my head.
You spoiled us.
To bring us back, the guilt that happens.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And shame.
Right. The guilt and the shame that appears after that, right? When you have all the societal pressures that you internalize into, these are all the things I should do. Right now you're like, you're down 3 touchdowns and you haven't even started the game.
Yeah. It's like our goal here at Calm the Chaos is to remove that shame and blame, and for you to realize you are exactly the parent you are meant to be. And you don't have to completely radically change every aspect of your life to start putting some of these ideals into practice today. And so let's talk a little bit about what connection really is, and then let's walk through our Calm the Chaos plan using the framework.
Yeah. And I think going through what connection really is going to help some of the people who, are not naturally like play people or like imaginative people, or like even people, right? Like outgoing, like let's spend all the time with other humans people.
Because that's a real part of why connection is hard as well. Like 1, it can be overwhelming. 2, you have differing needs. 3, you might just not be a very play-based person. And so, for me as an early childhood educator, play comes naturally to me, but for you, it doesn't necessarily come naturally to sit and play with trucks, or to, when our kids were little, or to play with dolls. Whereas like our babysitter is incredible. I mean, she has like different voices and she comes up with her own crafts.
There was a whole like Russian syndicate that was happening with the LOLs. I mean, it was pretty intricate.
So elaborate and so intricate. And not everyone thinks that way. And then somehow, again, we're left to believe that we must not be good parents if we are not super playful like that.
Sure. So let's talk about what it is. What it is.
Okay, so to me, connection is a feeling of belonging and a feeling of acceptance and a feeling of affirming who I am. And really, it's that feeling of safety and belonging. And then it's this, I think it comes down to, it's a feeling. Connection is a feeling of being surrounded by people who love you, who accept you for who you are, not necessarily, I'm connected because I did 10 things with other people today. So obviously it's some time spent together, but it's more about how I leave feeling versus how much time I get with you.
Yeah. And as you're saying that, it really reminds me of that Maya Angelou quote, right? They don't remember what you do, but they remember how they make you feel. I probably butchered that. But it's really powerful. It's really like a lot of people reference it, but good because it's important.
Yeah. I also think it's the way that you talk to someone. I think that someone can feel very connected and very safe in your world when you're using language that isn't abrasive or that is affirming to who they are, that isn't nagging or pushy, but instead it's just you're talking to them. You say this in so many episodes, but you're talking to them like humans, not like they're beneath you.
Sure. That makes me think of times where I'll be annoyed at the kids or just mad about something or whatever. And they'll try to interact with me. And I don't say a single thing that is out of line or mean or whatever, but I'm definitely mean mugging or short with them or, just short burst communication.
Yeah.
Right. And then they walk away feeling dejected. And it's I didn't say anything. I literally said, doop, doop,
I think that's such a good point. I think body language and our nonverbal communication plays such a big role in how connected we can be or feel. And it's sometimes we're not doing it on purpose, but we have to be more aware and more intentional on what our body language is saying, what our words are saying, what actions we're doing in all of our interactions, not just when we sit down to play with our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. So let's talk about a plan, because here at Calm the Chaos, and if you go back to the beginning episodes, we laid out the Calm the Chaos way with our 4-part framework, which is you, connect, understand, empower, and the roadmap, the 5-step roadmap. So we're just going to create a plan today and give you some ideas that you can use. But really, depending on where you are in that roadmap, some of these might not be possible yet, and that's okay. So let's talk through the you piece. What are some thought swaps that parents can do if they're thinking, I don't have any time, I don't like playing, my kids don't like connecting with me, my kids don't like me, I don't like my kid. What are some thought swaps that we can swap when connection is a challenge?
Yeah, you threw 400 examples there.
I know.
For the time piece, and this one goes for anything in life, not just connecting with your kids. You have the choice to say, I don't have enough time. There's never enough time. But the truth is you have enough time for the things that matter most. So that comes down to readjusting priorities, maybe looking at the situation from a different angle so that you can see what time you do have. And then, during that connection, be present in that moment and commit in those small time chunks that you do have so that you're maximizing what you do have.
Yeah. In the book, we talk about these thought swaps and thought monsters and super swaps. And one is the always and never beast, and then swapping that for Fact Finder Freddy. And so if you're saying, I never have time, or my kids always want my attention, it's never enough, then you can use Fact Finder Freddy and say, okay, when am I in the same room as my kid? When am I in the same location as my kid? When am I interacting with my kid? And that can be, oh, I'm in the kitchen with my kid in the mornings. I'm in the car as we drive to school. I'm in the living room with them while I'm putting away laundry. If you have those moments, now you can focus on shifting how you interact in those very, very small moments instead of looking at this absolute as all 24 hours are completely full.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also, another one is like, it's all or nothing. And so if we look at our day and it's full of meetings and it's full of work and it's full of going to practice and it's full of dinner and homework and getting out the door and getting to bed and all the routines, then it feels like there is no time left. It really does feel that way. And
I was thinking about how you just said we were like, my day is full of dinner. And then I was thinking about the hobbits, and then there was like third breakfast. And
oh my goodness, you
breakfast.
Are squirrely today. So I just
wanted to envision a life just that was full of dinner.
That was full of dinner. That's not what I meant, but I see what you're saying. I meant it was full of all these things. And so it can feel like it's all or nothing. And if you're looking for a huge time chunk, if you're looking for 4 hours to go on a family bike ride, you might not find it. But if you're looking for 5 minutes to change your interactions, it's going to be a lot easier to find that at the beginning.
Absolutely. And that's what I was really going to say was that means that it's about taking advantage of those in-between moments, not the 4-hour chunks where we go to the apple orchard and play football in the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that brings us to the second piece, which is connect. And so you just talked about focusing on those in between versus planned. And we talk a lot about that inside the book. We talked about it when we talked about the ahead of the moment plan in that episode. And so what we're talking about here, when we're talking about in between connections, we're talking about your voice. We're talking about your body language. We're talking about a hand on the shoulder. We're talking about when you walk into your teen's room, instead of being like, oh, the dishes are still there. Instead saying, hey, buddy, I just wanted to walk in and say, I love you. Close the door, come back another time and say, hey, I noticed that there are still dishes in your room. Do you mind cleaning them up? But really focusing on the fact that not every interaction is a request or a demand or an ask of our kids, but instead it's an actual quality interaction of, hey, I love you, or how are you today, or tell me about your day. And when we do that in these small moments, then our kids are going to trust us to come with us. I mean, last night, you don't even know this part yet. Oh my gosh. I won't tell the whole story, but our son went for his first lake trip with his friends. He's a teenager. And he comes home last night and he's super excited and he's telling me all about the things that happened. And one of the things that he ends up saying, he slips in there that they flipped the golf cart. Okay. And I was like, why did Pop Pops not call me? And he was like, oh, we could never tell Pop Pops this. Like, we would be in so much trouble. He would have been so mad, right? But my son felt safe enough to tell me what had happened.
I sure hope Pop Pops isn't listening right now.
I know, Pop Pops, I'm so sorry.
I doubt
Pop Pops is listening. And all the kids are safe. And what's so funny is he's like, well, we banned so-and-so from driving the golf cart the rest of the weekend because he didn't trust himself to drive the golf cart. We didn't trust him because he's the one that flipped it. And we were just super careful the whole rest of the weekend. So they obviously learned their lesson, but it was like, I felt so good that he told me, but so scared.
Just keep in mind, this is the child who wants to go get his license so that he can drive my actual car.
I know. And I said to him, instead of getting on to him about how dangerous it was and, you should have been thinking, what were you thinking? I was like, you know what, buddy, I'm really thankful.
They were having fun.
That you told me this because it means that you trust me And I appreciate that. And please keep bringing things to me, even if you're afraid that I might not like them, and it opened the door. I was able to ask if there was any drinking involved or if there were any drugs or if they met up with any girls. And he was like, no. Like,
what a fool. He didn't meet up with
he
girls.
was like, of course we drank. And I was like, what do you mean you drank? And he's like, we had Gatorade and we had Sprite. I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I'm glad we're on the same page here, but that was connection, even though I didn't see him all weekend because he was gone. But I sent, you can send text to your teenagers. You can sit beside them.
I think that's a really big key there, right? Is you can communicate with your children via electronic communications.
Yeah.
And you can still have a deep, meaningful relationship.
Yeah.
I know most of my friendships are, like computer-based or electronic-based, just because we're located all over the world.
Yeah. And it's even as much as, here's a really small way that you can boost your connection with your kids. When your kid walks into the room, close your computer, put down your book, put down your cooking, put down your phone, stop, turn, and just say, hey, what is it you need? That small pivot is huge for a kid, for them to be like, wow, I'm important enough that they put down what they were doing. And then on top of that, one other quick tip for boosting connection is if you say, hey, you know what? I'm really busy right now. I really want to hear what you have to say. In 5 minutes, I'm going to be done cooking this. Or in 10 minutes, this meeting's going to be over. I promise we will talk. Then follow up on that. Like, don't forget, make a note somehow. But our kids are waiting for us to see if they can trust when we say, in a minute. If we say in a minute over and over again, but we never actually turn to our kids to hear what they have to say, they're going to stop coming to us. So I think it's super important to not always stop what we're doing, but pause for a second, get their, give them the small connection and then turn back to what you're doing. And then if they know that they can trust for you to come back, they will wait it out.
Yeah. And having integrity with what you say is probably an entire podcast series. But it is super important. That's a really great point.
Yeah. And I think one other simple way that you can connect, even if you don't have a lot of time, is you can help your kids with their cleaning of the room. You can help them with the putting away of the laundry or with the cleaning up of the toys. Instead of just saying it's time to clean up, I'm going to go work in the kitchen. You can work with them, and that can be really helpful as well.
Yeah. And the next point, like as we dive into like the understand piece of the framework, it almost works in conjunction with the connect piece of this puzzle. Is helping them understand kind of the ins and outs of what's going on in their life, right? Like, hey, I noticed you were doing this. Did you ever like think if this is why you were doing this? Or like literally just give them what the steps are that you're thinking. Don't assume that they know or understand all of the steps.
I think that this is what Dan Siegel calls mindsight, where you're speaking out the things you're thinking, because our kids don't have metacognition, which is the ability to think about their thinking. So the more that we think out loud and we say the things we're doing, we say the things we're thinking, then they learn those skills along the way. I think that's what you're talking about here.
Sure. And, like right now we are a couple of days or weeks into summer break, right? Our oldest has just graduated high school. His schedule varies wildly right now. Mm-hmm. And I have a worry, right? Because he takes a couple of meds in the morning. I have a worry of what the alternate of like taking them at 9, taking them at 12, taking them at 2, forgetting to take them until 5, right? Like that variation, what it's doing to his body. And as I've been thinking the last couple of days, I doubt he has any clue over, like he's not thinking about, he knows he has to take the meds because it helps him, but he's not thinking about like the timing of the meds and why that's important from a physical, biological standpoint.
So being able to bring that up.
Yeah. So it's like, I've been thinking I need to mention that to him so that he can like integrate that into his thing.
And I think the other understand part of connection when you don't have time really is getting clear on what is each person's unique needs, in the fact of what do they need to feel trust? What do they need to feel belonging? What do they need to feel safe, to feel heard, to feel like they are able to be who they are. And for our oldest, he needs to be able to just tell us about a TV show he's watching and us just listen. He needs that on a pretty regular basis. Our daughter needs actual physical, we need to go somewhere with her.
It's really hard, right? Like yesterday he was like, oh man, I found the Jackass movie and I watched it. And then he was just talking about all of like the juvenile stunts, the ridiculous stunts these guys do. And he was like, this is the best time of my entire life, right? And even when I was a teenager, I thought like that was not really the best. It wasn't my cup of tea. I knew people who thought it was amazing.
There's some people that love that. His dad loves it, which is...
Sure. But like, it was really hard because like, not only am I like, yeah, whatever, right? But it's like actively, I'm like, this is so stupid. Why would you do this? Why do you think it's funny? Like, it was really hard to just listen. And I was trying so hard not to be like, yeah, whatever. You know, like I was trying to ask questions and like engage in what he was saying.
I just wonder, I'm going to call you out. I wonder how much your body language was speaking, yeah, whatever, this is dumb. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, you don't hide your emotions very well or your thoughts very well.
I didn't stop what I was doing.
Yeah.
Right, because he came down and I was cleaning up the kitchen. I kept cleaning around him.
Yeah.
But I was still trying to, like...
Yeah.
engage with him in the conversation in so much, right? And the reality is, like, he doesn't have any of the clues that say this person's not interested in what we're saying, which helps me sometimes because I'm not interested in what he's saying. It's true. I don't really want to talk about... I know,
but sometimes we have to find a way to be interested in what our kids are saying.
Yeah, I'm terrible at that, is what I'm saying.
Yes, you are. I know that.
So totally cool.
So, but for me, right, I didn't want to hear about the movie.
This is actually really good. This is really good, right? Like, I don't want to pretend this is all like Powerpuff Girls and we're amazing.
No, we're not.
Right?
We're
like,
human.
I'm a totally flawed human being, right?
Yeah,
in all
humans.
the best ways. And I would still check the box that I have a pretty good relationship with him. It's not perfect. We're not best friends. We're not like riding off in the sunset together. But I care.
What dad and or stepdad and son are riding off into the sunset?
Lots of. My dad is my best friend, right? Like,
I know, but are you guys riding off in the sunset?
All the time.
Okay, all right.
So, yeah, you don't even know what we do. We're in the sunset with the riding all the time.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Okay, but this is important though.
Okay.
Because we still have a pretty connected relationship. He still comes to us to help him solve problems.
Yes.
Right? And he knows we have his back.
Yes, 100%. And so, and you don't spend a million hours with him.
No.
Right? Like,
no.
And that's okay. And so that's kind of what we're talking about here is you don't have to spend that million hours with your kids for them to feel like you are the trusted individual. And, you know, so I think that's a really good point. And just knowing what helps him feel connected. Like for him, when you help him find a game or you help him set up his electronics, when you ask him to help you fix something.
Sure.
Those things, he's like, oh, I'm needed, I'm wanted, I am valued. That even just asking him, we know he's going to say no to going to dinner with us almost every single time because he doesn't like being in public. But we ask every time, hey, we're going to dinner. Would you like to go with us? Like we were going to go to the pool yesterday and we're like, hey, we might go to the pool today. Would you like to go? And he was like, no. And I was like, okay, just thought I'd ask. You know, like obviously he didn't want to go to the pool. And I'm not asking him to make him feel guilty that he's not going. I'm asking him so that he can know that he's included in our thoughts and in our planning.
Well, sure, and giving him the choice empowers him.
Yeah. And even saying like, since you're not going to go to the pool, do you want to, I have time right now to watch a TV show with you. Do you want to watch something? And that being something that we can do as an alternative. All right. So we've really kind of dug deep into understand and we've kind of started moving into this empower piece. And the empower piece really is just creating a plan where you're being intentional about your connection. And depending on where you are in your relationship with your child, this might be that you create a brainstorm of ways that they like to feel connected, things that help them feel connected, ways that they like to feel seen and heard. And it could also be with younger children. It could be creating a plan, what we call like a play beside plan. If you know that you have time that you've got to work in the kitchen or in the living room, and then they're playing beside you and you're kind of parallel working, that can also be a way to feel connected.
Yeah. And, as we're talking about this, right, we sort of like went over the framework. It reminds me of a pair of kiddos in our program. I don't want to use their names because they're kids and, all that good jazz. So there was a girl child, the older sibling, who I think was like early teens when mom was going through our course. Mm-hmm. And they would listen in the car, like on the way to school and after, on the way home.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And what ended up happening is like the mom joined for the younger sibling, the boy. Mm-hmm. And during like the listening of all this, it was kind of like, hey man, I think this is me. Like you're describing me. And she really connected to the framework and learned a ton about connecting in the moment with her sibling, right? And the sibling did struggle and he was,
I mean, they couldn't be left in the same room together before this. And then, a couple of months later, and the mom and dad had to leave the house for something, and she was older. She's like 16, so she could watch the younger brother, and she helped him clean and organize his room so that it worked for his brain. And then I actually just talked to this parent recently. The girl's off to college. The boy is in high school, and they talk on a regular basis on the phone now. And she walked the brother through ways to navigate like friendships and teachers at school. I mean, it's really phenomenal.
And what I was thinking is just, she really found the power of in-between moments.
Yeah.
Because when she was focusing on all the negativity and all the struggles that he had and kind of internalizing and personalizing them and taking them personally, it was very hard to connect with him.
Yeah.
When she was able to flip that and look for those small in-between moments and focus on those, it radically transformed their entire relationship.
It did. And it makes me think of, the other thing that people will say is, well, I'm trying to find ways to connect with my kid, but they don't want to have anything to do with it, especially teenagers, right? My kid doesn't want me to talk to them. My kid gets triggered when I talk to them. And that's probably because of the history you have with them, honestly, and the experiences they've had up till now. And so they're expecting you to nag, to request, to ask something. So instead, it makes me think of one of our amazing students who has teenagers, and she really had to focus on this connection piece because she found herself nagging constantly about homework, about the room being clean, about their schoolwork, about their appearance, what they were wearing, what they weren't wearing, what they were doing to their hair, what they were doing with their piercings, like all these things. And they had to really actively swap from, I'm going to nag, to I'm just going to notice things about you. I'm going to talk with you. I'm just going to say hi. I'm just going to be there with you. I'm just going to listen, actively listen to you. And I'm going to swap my frustration towards, you're not who I thought I'd have as a teenager, to I'm just going to accept you. This is who you are. You're your own person. And as a teenager, I can't change that. Like you're at this point, it's about helping you love yourself and helping you know that you are loved here in this family. And that made a huge difference. Her son was struggling in school. He wasn't turning in work. He wasn't going to school. Like there were so many different things here, and he was failing all his classes. And he ended up, because of this connection, working with mom, finding a way to graduate early from, like an online program. And then he ended up traveling Europe all by himself and being super independent and getting his first job. And he's doing wonderfully now. And now she's going through the same thing with her 16-year-old and her daughter. And she's just saying, okay, I've done this before. I can do it again. It's all about building those in-between moments, that trust, and that the relationship, that communication, and that acceptance. It's not about how much time we spend together. And I think that is the big takeaway that I want people to get from this one, is it's about how you make your kids feel versus how much time you spend with your kids.
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking like we should wrap up here. Like we're getting towards the end of the thing. I was like, what's your number one takeaway? And then you just
Yeah, that was the number one takeaway. And, we've been trying to, in the last couple of episodes, leave them with one tiny baby step that's actionable that they can take away and start doing right now. What is that one action step you think they could do based on everything we've talked about today?
Oh man, my brain is blank.
Okay.
I have like 1,000 things in my brain I could be thinking.
I think it's
is there something that you were...
Yeah, I just think make a commitment right now to, when this podcast stops, one, be sure to like and subscribe and be sure to follow and review.
Do that. Tiny step.
That is a tiny step. And then after you do that, go and connect with your kid. Now, that does not mean get out Monopoly. That does not mean make dinner for them. Just what is one small interaction you can do with your kid? A gesture.
Call them a chicken nugget.
You can call them a chicken nugget. That's a whole nother story. We're not going on that tangent. No, you can, what is one small way you can help your child feel heard, seen, and valued today? That is your next step. And over the next couple of episodes, we're going to be talking about some of the, I'm kind of excited about our next episode. We're going to be talking about the different types of behavior and swapping, seeing it as a challenge and seeing it as a struggle to seeing it as a superpower. And it's one of my favorite things to talk about. So be sure to check back next week for this amazing episode, and we will see you next time. Don't forget, you have got this.